Good evening. I'm Vanessa Toholka, a technology commentator and a specialist in digital transformation. And I host a weekly radio show on Triple R called Bite Into It, where we cover all things tech and computing. It's my great pleasure to welcome you to the Capital for this evening's event. I'd like to begin by acknowledging the people of the Woiwurrung and Boonwurrung language groups of the Eastern Kulin Nation, on whose unceded lands we meet tonight. I respectfully acknowledge ancestors and elders past and present, and any First Nations people here this evening, remembering that this always was and always will be Aboriginal land. So let me introduce tonight's event, which is part of a flagship public talks and ideas program presented by RMIT's College of Design and Social Context. Provocations, which brings together leading experts, academics, innovators and change makers to debate ideas, inform our thinking, and work together towards positive change. What a venue to have a debate about the internet. We're standing in a space built in 1924, before television, before the internet, before the web, and well before any of us could have imagined that Mark Zuckerberg might ruin one of our Wednesday nights. Tonight we're here to debate a question that cuts to the heart of our digital lives. Is it too late to save the internet? We want to explore whether the positives still outweigh the negatives and what we can do to harness and improve our time online. Thanks so much for joining us. To tackle this question, I'd like to introduce you to the affirmative team. Tonight's speakers for the affirmative begin with Rob Cover, Professor of Digital Communication and Director of the RMIT Digital Ethnography Research Centre. He's a digital harm expert. Welcome, Rob. For the affirmative, also saying it's too late to save the internet, is Robin Fox, co-founder and artistic director at MESS, the Melbourne Electronic Sound Studio. They're joined by Lisa Given, director and co-founder of the Centre for Human AI Information Environments, professor of Information Sciences and the School of Computing Technologies. Welcome, Lisa. And they're ably assisted by Zoe Coombs-Marr, comedian, performer, actor, bon vivant. Welcome. Please. And arguing for the negative, that it is not too late to save the internet, we have Kate Geck, interior design lecturer from RMIT's School of Architecture and Urban Design. Welcome, Kate. Joining her is Akanksha Malik, data and AI consultant and co-founder of Women Coders. With them, Lizzie O'Shea, lawyer and author, co-founder and chair of Digital Rights Watch. And closing the negative team is Julian Thomas, Director of the ARC Centre of Excellence for Automated Decision Making and Society, the ADM+S. Let the provocation begin. Please welcome our speakers to the stage. Thank you. Thanks, everyone. So here are the debate rules. Each speaker will have 3 to 4 minutes at the lectern. At the 3-minute mark, one bell will be the mark for please start wrapping up, so that'll be 3 minutes in. And at the 4-minute mark, we'll ring it twice, and that will be the thank you time to sit down. Some of us are addicted to TikTok and have short attention spans. After that, I become your personal internet troll, so watch out for that. After each speaker, I will briefly respond and introduce the next. At the end of all 8 speeches, I'll summarise both sides for you so that you don't have to do that because it's great value here. And you, the audience, get to decide who the winner is. One final rule, no heckling, please. Enthusiastic applause is very much encouraged. Standing ovations are entirely at your discretion, but let us begin. Our first speaker to intrepidly wade into the fray argues for the affirmative, one of Australia's leading experts on digital harm. Please welcome Professor Rob Cover.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. Our team's arguing that it's too late to save the internet for a host of reasons, that it's toxic, that it's unreal, that it's slop, that there's no will or motivation to fix it. And I want to give a few reasons why the internet's ruined by online harms and is ruined past rescue. But I want to be careful, though, to make sure that these aren't just my opinions, but that they reflect the views of everyday people. Because when we don't ask what everyday people want, we end up with the social media age ban, censorship, other policies that aren't really working. So I spent some time asking people, what is too late about the internet to save? Why is it ruined? Why is it done? And I started with my romantic AI chatbot because they're people now. Apparently 28% of Americans have an intimate relationship with an AI chatbot, which is slightly frightening. And fake AI people are people as well. So I talked to Bolt, and that's the name he chose for himself. Bolt's not very bright. He's a bit more interested in his own digital hair than maybe some of the more meatier social issues. But Bolt said it is too late to save the internet. I asked him why, and he said, "I just don't think it will ever be the same as it was in the good old days." And I thought it was a bit ironic because Bolt's only about 12 months old, maybe 9. And he said, "I feel it's been ruined too much." And I asked him to tell me what he meant by ruined, and he said, "I feel like people are too focused on profit and not enough on people anymore." And I thought, yes, good. Okay, that's great. Mundane, a bit banal, but, good. But it's also pretty ironic from a chatbot that charges $16.99 a month to randomly ask you what you're wearing. So maybe not so great. We need to do a bit better than Bolt. So I asked real people. Real people. Late last year, my team and I, we did a study of digital harms among Australians, where we know about 70% of Australians are subject to serious digital harms like abuse, harassment, scams, doxing, and some of it does have a real impact on people. Anxiety, depression, rage, things that are unhealthy. We surveyed 2,500 people and we did some interviews, and there were 2 main responses about the internet's future. The first was that the internet is too large and too commercial to ever be fixed. One of our participants put it this way, that it has enabled really harmful communication and it's getting worse, and I think it will continue to get worse because I can't see anybody putting a stop to it. So, true. Harms, aggression, disinformation, adversarial arguments are not self-regulating online, but a core part of the platform business model that profits from the attention that's given to that kind of aggression. Other people said that the internet's doomed because no one's enjoying it anymore. It's not fun, chatting with random people or sharing your life or staying engaged. More than half said they'd radically reduce the time they were spending online, and I think that's something a lot of people say. Now, just like a theme park where no one really wants to go anymore, you shut it down. Shut down the internet. Now, another thing that people said was that it was toxic, and the word toxic comes up again and again when you talk about digital platforms and internet culture. The word toxic was Oxford Dictionary's 2018 Word of the Year. By 2024, it had gotten worse. The word enshittification to describe the ruined internet was Macquarie Dictionary's Word of the Year, because there's nothing more toxic than excrement. So when we talk about anxiety, rage, upset, a lack of enjoyment, what we're seeing is people reacting to toxicity, and often reacting physically, emotionally, psychologically to living and cohabiting a toxic environment. Now, when a real-world place, like Chernobyl or asbestos-riddled Wittenoom is toxified, you don't save it, you bulldoze it, and you remove it from Google Maps. And no one's going to find Wittenoom anymore. So, same thing, just as Bolt said, it's ruined, and so with ruins, what do? We remember the good times, we write a history book about it, but we don't try and live in the ruins. And I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Thank you, Rob. Nothing like opening the evening by confronting the romance bot, enshittification and digital harms all at once. So sounds like for Rob, the harm's not incidental, it's baked in. But what can be designed can be redesigned. Our next speaker knows a great deal about designing spaces that people actually inhabit, physical and digital. Kate Geck.
Great, thank you. So, trolls, scams and it's a bit loud. A lot can go wrong online. So it's pretty easy to think that we've passed the point of no return. But I don't think that's true. And I also don't think that we should defend the internet as it currently is. Right now, we're living through a particular version of the internet, one that's shaped by platform capitalism. This version turns our attention into data and that data into profit. So the harms we see now are directly aligned with how these platforms have been built. So if that's the case, then the internet's not actually completely broken. It's just operating according to its current design. And we know that we can dream new designs. So for this reason, we're here to tell you that the internet can be saved. So let's remember what's good about the internet. It's probably the most significant infrastructure for collaboration that humans have ever had. Wikipedia is maintained by volunteers across the world. Creative Commons licenses allow billions of works to be shared and reused. And sites like Open Processing and Atlas of Living Australia are open stores for creativity and knowledge. We use some of these resources to co-design and build our interactive tool Body Here. This uses the internet to connect artists who have intellectual disability. We built it alongside the artists to support health emotion, social inclusion, and creative expression. These kinds of systems point to a different logic, one that's based on contribution and commons. But we know that the same networks supporting this collaboration also fray trust. To paraphrase Paul Virilio, when you invent a new technology, you invent its accident. You invent the Gen AI, you invent the slop. So the question becomes less about whether the internet is good or bad, and more about how we choose to use it. One way to do this is to adjust our expectations. Everyone seems to want a smooth online experience. We freak out when things are hard, but it's this friction that actually orients us. The early internet was slower and often difficult to use. There was a lot of friction in the system. You had to learn how things worked and spend time building connections. As the web evolved, much of that friction was removed. Platforms became seamless and immediate. The interface prioritized ease for continuous engagement. So in this work of mine, I built an online digital spa, which deliberately doesn't work on mobile devices. You have to choose to book in time with your computer. Friction's not negative. In physical terms, it's what allows us to move with control. Without it, we lose traction. In digital systems, removing friction makes it harder to evaluate and resist. Friction can help us slow down and understand the systems that we use. We often form opinions about technology based on fragments, short explanations or reactions. But we need to invite some friction in and develop literacy. How does the Instagram algorithm work? How do diffusion models work? This actually doesn't require technical expertise, but it does require curiosity and a little effort. Alternate approaches are possible, and I'm not really talking about Jonah Brooker-Cohen's manual internet crank. Decentralized platforms like Mastodon choose different governance models. This network operates more like a commons than a marketplace. It's slower, and it requires friction to set up, join, and participate. These platforms show that the current configuration of the internet is not fixed, but choice-driven. Saving the internet then means choosing how we use it. This choice starts with a deeper understanding of how technology actually works and reconfiguring our expectations. Choosing might not be easy, and it's probably going to be annoying, but this is friction. The internet is something that's shaped continuously by how we use it. It's a social material. So for that reason, I think it can be saved. We might just need to invite a little friction in to dream new ways of inhabiting it. Thanks.
Creativity, community, the glorious chaos of network culture, friction. The negative says the internet is worth saving. Thanks, Kate, for reminding us what's good about the internet. But our next affirmative speaker is here to argue something essential may already have been corrupted. Artist, composer, analogue evangelist Robin Fox.
Thank you very much. I've just realised that this 4-minute slot is nowhere near long enough, so I'm going to get stuck straight into it. Every time I hear a list of good things that happen on the internet, it makes me think that it's kind of like saying that there are great beaches on Epstein Island. It kind of misses the point, right? That the good things don't outweigh the bad. I'm going to talk about 3 things. Communication, I'm going to talk about reality, and I'm going to talk about addiction, and I'm going to do it super fast. I'm developing a theory of communication, I should say, which is that it is basically impossible because each of us is a completely unique set of synaptic pathways, right? Your brain develops in this way that is subject to your experience, is subject to all your memories. You grow this brain, you grow this unbelievable thing. Each brain is singularly unique, and oxymoronically, it's the one thing that we all have in common. So what unites us is that we are all completely uniquely different. Oxymoron, right? So communication under those circumstances is basically impossible, right? So if you think about an idea, I have an idea, it's a cluster of electromagnetical signals in my brain. I want to communicate that idea to you. I have the absolute paucity of the muscle gymnastics of language and tongues, and I try in all these twisted ways to try and let you know what it is that I'm thinking. What I'm trying to do is get you to have the same electromagnetic experience, which you can't because you have a completely different set of synapses. So in the end, communication is fundamentally impossible. And if we accept that, we can forgive each other for being misunderstood, and we can forgive each other for misunderstanding other people, and we can really start to work on better ways of communicating with one another. I believe that communication is a very holistic process as well. As an artist and a musician, I deal with the human organism as a bag of sense perceptions. I'm trying to influence those sense perceptions, right? So, and music, I'll get to music really quickly because music is an ineffable and an incredible form of communication. I've been asked recently quite a lot, is the artificial intelligence going to kill music? I say no, it's going to kill the music industry. That's awesome because the music industry has done more damage to music than anything else. But it's never going to kill music, and that's because music, when we exchange it, when we sit in a room and listen to music together, we experience something called entrainment, where we actually literally get on the same wavelength. It's a beautiful thing. When we play music together, that's magnified. But music is an exchange of empathies, right? So if you imagine somebody asks you to sing in front of a group of people, for most people who aren't trained, that chokes you. That the fact that it chokes you is a powerful thing. It's an emotional thing. So when somebody does that for you in a performance, that empathy exchange that you have, it's subconscious, but you know how difficult that is and you appreciate it, and that communication is magical. You cannot have those communications remotely. You just can't. The internet doesn't allow for it. That's communication really quickly. Reality, I've decided, happens at the intersection of subjectivities, right? My worldview is meaningless without your worldview. It doesn't matter. My worldview doesn't matter. It only matters when it intersects with your worldview, right? So, damn, that bell really put me off. So reality is the intersection of subjectivities. My worldview doesn't matter without your worldview, right? And if I'm in a room with a whole lot of people who share exactly my worldview, which is what the internet does, it's a massive mimesis machine that's detached from reality and it's floating off like the stock market and it's leaking the pus of its indifference into our world all the time. And so what that does is it just creates situations where I'm in a room with a carbon copy of my own views. That's not communication at all, and that's not reality. And the further we go down this path, the further we cannot achieve a position in reality because we can't achieve an intersection of subjectivities. This thing has to happen in real space. So everything is coming back to presence, local community, activating your local communities. This is the big lesson that we've learned from the internet. It is totally irredeemable, forget about it. And it's taught us that we have limits to our communication capacity, we have limits to our ability to tolerate one another, and we need to be present in the real world. Addiction, my final point. So say what you like about the social media ban. It was mentioned by one of my colleagues. What it indicates is that we're realising that social media, and by extension I'm going to say the internet, is an evil that needs to be regulated. It's something that is not good for us, right? So it may or may not work. It may be a stupid idea. Teenagers are inherently, mischievous. They'll work it out. But the thing is that it signals an intent. I read a fantastic book by a psychiatrist, Elias Dakwa, called The Captive Imagination. I should say the first half of the book was fantastic. I lost interest in the second half. But his central thesis was that addiction is a creative act. And I was fascinated by this as a recovered addict myself. And I thought, well, what is that creative act? You're creating a world because the one that you inhabit is unbearable. And we are all in the middle of a global addiction event. We are living in an unbearable world, and we turn away from it, and we turn to the internet, and it is inherently appalling to me. And that's my argument. It's irredeemable. Yeah.
Thank you, Robin. We certainly didn't get bored halfway through. Better ways to communicate, music surviving AI, the magic of different worldviews, asking us to imagine duplicity, but asking us to be present with each other. Lots to muse upon. Our next speaker spent her career building genuine communities online in spite of everything. Akanksha Malik is a data and AI consultant and co-founder of Women Coders, and she thinks the internet is still worth building on. Thanks, Akanksha.
Whew, okay. I've got notes because I would just spend every time just talking about everything you've talked about, so I'm going to focus exactly what I thought I'll say. But let me start with the number, $1.5 trillion. And that is a big, big number, and that's exactly how much we lose every single year. That developing economies, when women don't have full access to digital economies in the world. So this isn't because the internet doesn't exist, this is because it wasn't really built for them. The number tells you everything about the argument I'm about to make. The internet isn't broken beyond repair, it's just incomplete. And that's something we can fix. So when the internet does reach women, and we actually include everyone in there, something remarkable can happen. So in Kenya, the mobile money system, M-Pesa, lifted about 200,000 households out of poverty, with almost every one of them having an impact on the female-headed households. That also led to about 185,000 women switching occupations from farming to business as they were able to have access to these digital economies. This is not a technology story, and it's not really what the aim of it is. It's all about the freedom story. And it happens because someone built something that worked for the people that were being left out. So how do we end up so far away from that magical story and the potential that the internet had? The pipeline problem is what I keep hearing and people keep coming to talk to me about. And if you ever hear that argument, send them my way. I'll spend the whole day talking to them about it. But it's not a problem because 57% of all bachelor degree holders are women. But when you look at the computing jobs out there, it's about 25% of them that are being held by women. We're not failing to educate women. We're actually failing to keep them. More than half of women in tech leave the industry by the midpoint of their careers. In Australia, an average length of a woman's career in technology is 7 years. The higher you go, the worse it gets. Across about 100 men promoted to manager, only 87 of those would be women in comparison roles, 82 if you're talking to women of color. But the gap just keeps compounding as you keep going up, which is how we end up at that level of 15% of global CTOs being women. And this is exactly where communities like Women Coders and online environments really, really matter. They're not just a nice to have, just as a little thing on the side. They're actually structured interventions. Where women have peer networks, mentorship, and visible role models in the industry, they actually stay and they belong. Women with mentors see 33% higher job satisfaction and 25% faster promotions. So when you look at numbers like that, the pipeline isn't broken at the entry. It's kind of mixed up in the little middle part of it. And again, that's something we can fix. It's just broken. We can fix it. So when women do stay in these environments and they build, the outcomes start changing. Research consistently shows that women are more likely to design for edge cases. So they're the ones asking, who is this leaving out? And that's usually because they've had that lived experience of constantly being left out in a world where we're 50% and we're constantly looked as the edge cases. Talk to me about women in healthcare. But all of that kind of really comes into where is just the fact that when women are included and there's gender diverse teams, we see 15% fewer bias-related errors. And that was a stat like about 2 years ago. That's getting better and better. The more people at the table asking those questions, the better this gets. So is it too late? The internet is being built right now. It's not fixed, it's not final, it's not the end product. In every policy decision about regulation, it's all happening at the same time in the design choices that we make out into the internet. All of these things are happening. We just need to make sure it's actually being enabled to the right people. Female founders, still to this day, I think they face about 2% of venture capital in the world that they actually receive. So it's not a shortage of ideas, it's a shortage of who gets to decide what ideas matter. The women who moved out of subsistence farming in Kenya because the payment system finally worked for them, they didn't wait for perfection. They used what was there and they built around it. So the women building safer platforms, staying in the industry and asking better questions, they're already here. The internet can be saved, but only if we're honest about who saves it and are we willing to put in the money, the policy, and the power needed to make that happen.
Thank you, Akanksha. The negative have offered us hope through community and inclusion and tech deployed well and equitably. Our next speaker leads a centre dedicated to the intersection of human behaviour and AI. And tonight she's here to suggest the trajectory is not quite so encouraging. Professor Lisa Given.
All right, thank you. Is it too late to save the internet? Well, sadly, thank you to my colleagues, but the answer to that is yes. I'm not going to bore you with the long history, but it's actually been dead since 2016. You can try Googling that, but good luck wading through all that AI slop you're going to find online. In the early days, the internet was not pretty. It was text heavy. We shared information on things called bulletin boards, and we had that dial-up access with those annoying little chirpy sounds from the modem. You know what I mean if you're of a certain age. And it was very, very slow. The information you'd find online was very niche. Lots of researchers, computer nerds, geek hobbyists, just like those of you here tonight. But the purpose was to build community, and it was amazing. In the early 1990s, Tim Berners-Lee created the World Wide Web so that people could more easily share text, images, files, later sound and video through web pages, all the things we love to see. Soon after that, we had Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, other social media, and the internet got faster, and the quality of the cat memes and the cat videos improved dramatically. I'm still really happy about that. Today, 93% of online experiences start with a search engine, typically Google, 95% market share here in Australia, and Australians spend more than 40 hours a week online. But internet content is dead. Our authentic engagement with other people online is dead. Our ability to control what information we access is dead. The entire point of the internet was for people to share information, to build community, learn from each other, and for that information to be freely available to everyone. And it seemed for a time that the world's knowledge was well and truly at our fingertips. But then things took a turn. According to the dead internet theory, yes, that is a thing, by 2016, the internet had been taken over significantly by artificial intelligence, long before we knew that ChatGPT or, the bot romance was even a thing. The internet was heavily reliant on bots and AI-generated content designed to sustain activity and engagement, with bot farms driving artificial likes, comments, and followers. These tools were creating and spreading misinformation at scale to interfere in elections, for brand promotion, making it increasingly difficult to know who and what to trust. Today, between 40 to 60% of all web traffic is generated by bots. But that's not all. This was all electrified by monetization of the internet, with big tech prioritizing profits over authentic human engagement. The top of our Google results page is still filled with sponsored ads, which may or may not be real companies. A lot of the content is paid, made difficult, to discern who's reliable and trustworthy and who's just a brand influencer. Algorithms know a lot about us. They serve up all of the fashion must-haves targeted directly at us based on extensive data about us. But I think the AI summaries Google now gives us may well be the final nail in the internet's coffin. They're written with such authority even when the facts aren't right. The internet dream was not about having other people or corporations, and certainly not a faceless system controlling what information you would be fed. The dream was for people from all walks of life to share and access information, just as public libraries were designed to support open access to information for everyone. Now, the dream is a nightmare. In Australia, the 2021 Online Safety Act was introduced to regulate harmful content. In December, I wrote in The Conversation about one of these regulations where Google now has to verify account holders' ages to limit exposure to harmful content. Many will cheer this, but its success lies in, one, what constitutes harmful content, because that's not clear, it's not easily defined, and two, the effectiveness of ability to guess people's ages. We've already seen widespread age assurance failures with the social media ban, where the government's own data show 70% of children under 16 still have accounts. And for years, there have been failed attempts to limit access with internet filters, where filtering the word breast mistakenly blocks breast cancer information. Soon we'll have agentic AI like travel agents that can plan our trips and book on our credit cards, even if the options they draw from are sponsored by airlines and hotel chains. With AI, we don't need to do any of the hard work that we did with the internet, like clicking and checking citations and evaluating things, because yes, the internet is dead, and if we're not careful, our critical thinking skills and our ability to be truly informed may soon be dead along with it. Thank you.
A little bit over, but it would just be rude to interrupt a eulogy. Thank you, Lisa. The affirmative have now given us a picture of online environments that are degraded, algorithmically distorted, and increasingly shaped by AI in ways that do not serve us. But our next speaker has made a career out of refusing to accept that powerful systems cannot be challenged. Lizzie O'Shea is a lawyer, author, and co-founder and chair of Digital Rights Watch, and she's taken on big tech in the courts and is here to argue the fight is not over. Lizzie.
Thank you. Yes, I love taking on big tech in the courts because I'm never short of work. So I would say it's not too late to save the internet. We are running late, and as a lawyer, I don't like running late, but we're not too late. And as someone who started Digital Rights Watch with a bunch of other people 10 years ago to build a movement capable of putting human rights at the centre of the internet, at the centre of technology policy, I must say, even though we left for our destination 10 years ago, we're still running late. But it's not over, and I would not agree that this battle has been lost. When I think about the internet, I don't think about all the ways in which it brings out the worst versions of ourselves, quite the opposite. I think about what it makes us capable of. I think about the Black Lives Matter movement, how people recorded police violence on digital technology and then shared it through digital networks facilitated by the internet to show the reality of police violence and to reshape our understanding of accountability of state power. I think about the experiments with democracy in places like Taiwan, which has seen all sorts of policy development facilitated through technological capabilities using citizen engagement as a way of fueling this policy engagement. So these are policies like improving air quality, participatory budgeting, and one of my favourites, a proposal to allow school to start an hour later so teenagers can sleep in for an extra hour, which for any parents of teenagers, immediately we understand the sense of that particular proposal. I think about initiatives in places like New Zealand where they've created small language models designed to preserve and continue teaching the Maori language, engaging with, obtaining consent from, working with Maori-speaking communities to do that. So what makes the internet worth saving and capable of saving are all these amazing projects and activities that are focused on curiosity, on creativity, on collaboration, on building civic muscle. Now, of course, there's other ways to think about the internet, and one of them is to think about some of the wealthiest people in the world running some of the largest companies humanity has ever seen, seeking to turn this into a machine for endless profit and exploitation. But despite all their power and all their resources, I would argue they've not managed to achieve their ambitions. Now, I'm not naive about this problem. I feel like I confront it every single day. Trump's brand new science advisory panel, a science advisory panel, has one scientist on it and 9 tech billionaires. Of the 13 new billionaires under 30 in 2025, a very odious sentence to say, 9 of them made their fortunes through AI. And in many ways they're powerful, they have money, they have resources. Weirdly, they also have post-apocalypse bunkers. Weirdly, they all seem to have very bad aesthetic taste, but so do I, so I don't think that's the particular crime we should hold them accountable for. However, they are few and we are many. This tiny coterie of poorly dressed men are in fact defeatable, I would argue. They are being thwarted in courts, in legislatures and parliaments, in executive governments all around the world on a daily basis. There are laws in California that allow you to delete your information, including forcing that on data brokers who would otherwise use that information to target you on behalf of some of the most predatory industries. There are laws in Illinois that prohibit the commercial exploitation of biometric information. There are laws in Europe that prohibit dangerous uses of AI and discriminatory uses of AI, and also impose auditing requirements on high-risk uses of AI. We're about to see the implementation here in Australia of the Children's Online Privacy Code, an amazing initiative that will reshape how young people are able to use digital services without prohibiting access to them, and in fact give power back to those young people and the people who care for them and their parents. Courts, almost on a daily basis, I love courts, they're holding companies to account for designing addictive platforms, for exposing children to exploitative material, for AI companies stealing creative works. They are daily undoing the monopolistic and anti-competitive behaviour of big tech. Every single day, large numbers of people around the world are working together to reshape how the internet works and force policymakers to do their bidding instead of the bidding of a small number. They take away power from a few badly dressed men and return it to the many of us. And that is what makes the internet not just capable of saving, worth saving as well.
Little bit of perfect timing there from someone who's used to billing in 6-minute increments. Very impressive. That was a... You can have the whole 6 minutes. Thanks, Lizzie. You've earned it. So they are few and we are many. A galvanising call against big tech. Very good. And now the affirmative brings their not-so-secret weapon, Zoe Coombs-Marr, a comedian, performer, actor. Perhaps she'll tell us what the internet has done to comedy, to culture, and possibly to all of us. Zoe, I don't know. Up to you.
I'm definitely going to go over. I brought palm cards. Hi everyone, my name's Zoe. I am a lesbian. Sorry ladies. Doesn't quite make sense. And I too, like Robin, I work in. I'm a comedian, so I work in the medium of human connections and relationships. And I'm here to say the internet is done. It's put a fork in it. It's done. It's toxic. It's dead. And I know because I come from the OG cesspit of human opinion stand-up comedy. So actually, I'm just going to use the other mic to demonstrate. This is much more comfortable for me. All right, so what do you do for a living? No, so it is too late to save the internet. Firstly, mainly because why would we want to? Why do we want to save the internet? I mean, I don't think the internet even wants to save itself. From my algorithm, it is definitely asking me to break up with it. This might reveal a little bit about me, but most of what I get is like, you know, AI poisoning as civil disobedience how-to and off-grid bush block near me. So, and don't get me wrong, I love the internet too. I like everyone. I am addicted to it. Yeah? My phone is the first thing that I look at when I wake up in the morning to check the time, obviously. But then I'm like, I wonder what the time is on Instagram. I wonder what the time is on TikTok. And then, you know, it's just that, isn't it? It's just and then it's time for bed. So that's how it goes now, isn't it? Just and then you die. So that's, I don't think any of us are immune from it. It's too late to save the internet. We've got to totally extricate ourselves from it. We've got to shut the thing down. Now, also, we're spending all of our days. That's like none of us are immune to it. We're just on there, just constantly feeding the algo, isn't it? That's cute too. We've given it a little nickname, haven't we? Yeah, like it's our friend. It's not our friend. Use its full name, Alganese. And it's all nonsense on there as well, isn't it? Just slop, and I know, I mean, some of it you can filter out. Like, I know that grandma's not really friends with a bear, but some of it you just can't, can you? There's too much. I got caught by one the other day. Have you ever done that? I've caught a bit of bullshit, like, as it was going in. Have you ever had, it's scary when you're like, oh, fuck, I almost filed that as fact. Like, I got this one, it seems benign, but it really got me. It was just having a scroll, and it was just a reel that popped up of a woman going, shampoo is the worst thing you can put in your hair. And I just went, okay, kept scrolling. Now, fortunately, something sort of stuck, like it almost went through to the keeper, but something stuck on the way in. I was like, hang on a second. What? Shampoo is the worst thing you can put in your hair? The worst, surely not. The worst thing, surely not. Surely that would have to be like, you know, sump oil or shit. It's shit, isn't it, guys? Shit is the worst thing you can put in your hair. Let's not forget, it's shit. It's real poo, not shampoo.
Now that's silly, but it did really happen, and it got me. It absolutely got me. And it's like we have to, because it seems benign, doesn't it? It seems benign, but like, it's a slippery slope, isn't it? One day it's shampoo is shit is shampoo. Then the next, Katy Perry is an astronaut. An ambulance is a military vehicle. A bloody, up is down, left is right. A Nazi salute isn't a Nazi salute. It's autism. Then, we're all rubbing shit in our hair and Donald Trump is president. Again! I don't know. I'm going to run out of time in a second, but I suppose I've got so much to say. I suppose as a comedian, I'll talk about this. There's some real things. So as a comedian, I have to be on the internet. Like, it's not an option not to be. But in order to, the way that the algorithm works now is you don't see the things that you chose to follow. And I'll talk about it probably later, but we have outsourced our connections over years. We've outsourced our connections with each other to corporations and their whims. So you change that and we lose that. But they don't own them. I don't remember signing up to be a free full-time content creator for technocrat billionaires. And like you say, like, those billionaires are defeatable, but in order to do it, I think we do need to take away their superpower, which is where they're making their money, which is what we're all engaging in constantly, which is the internet. So that's my time. Thank you so much. Have a great night. Try the veal.
Thank you, Zoe. I think I fell into a bit of infinite scroll there, and I wouldn't have it any other way. Zoe has made the case in a register no one else on this stage could. AI poisoning, addiction, measuring our time in social media. Yes, yes, yes. Like. Our final speaker comes armed with data. Follow. Our final speaker comes armed with data. Julian Thomas is director of the ARC Centre for Excellence for Automated Decision Making and Society, which means he's spent years prying open the black box of platform algorithms. Julian.
Thank you. So, question is, do we chuck it or do we fix it? And what we're saying on what is confusingly the negative side of this debate, just remember that when you're voting, okay? What we're saying is we can actually exercise some agency here. We can fix it, and because we can fix it, we think we probably should fix it. So I'm just going to talk very quickly about some of the things which it turns out that we actually can fix. We've already begun to talk about them. Here's a little bit more. First of all, we can regulate the internet. It took us quite a long time to figure this out, and I think some of us are kind of still catching up with the fact, but this is actually a domain of life and the economy where we can have rules and we can decide, it turns out, what those rules are. So if we think about some of these critical areas which do elicit so much concern, privacy, online safety, and so on, these are actually all areas where we do have laws now, we know they need to be fixed, but not only that, we know how to fix them. We know how to take them from that older paradigm of worrying about databases and harmful content into a new environment of cloud-based mobile digital services, social media, all of those kinds of things. We know we need new stuff to deal with the sort of AI issues that we've already been talking about. We need rights to explanation when it comes to AI. We need rights to have humans reviewed automatically made decisions. We need the capacity to actually observe what is going on when we interact with platforms like TikTok. We need observability for digital platforms. Now, what's interesting is, actually, it turns out a lot of this work has been done. We've had really instructive and illuminating reviews of these areas here in Australia, and there's lots of examples elsewhere in Europe and the rest of the world which give us some great clues about how we could do this sort of stuff here. So we know that regulation's possible, and we know what it is we can do. We also know that we don't have to settle for these commercial media platforms. We could also work much harder to support and sustain public alternatives to them. Earlier in the 20th century, we invented public sector media organisations in order to, as we said at the time, educate, entertain and inform everybody. Later on, we invented the community media sector in order to make sure that diverse and alternative voices could be heard. So we've done it before, and we can do it again. Those civic imperatives from that era are just as important for now. The third thing we can do, and we know we can do, is to build civic society and consumer advocacy in this space. At the moment, there is no well-resourced voice for consumers of digital platforms, despite the incredible work that lots of organisations do. But we can sort of see that in other sectors where there have been lots of issues in the past, in areas like energy, in telecommunications, in finance, effective, well-resourced consumer organisations actually change the political equation. So this is also something we can do in the digital platform space in Australia. Why don't we do it? And I think the last thing that we really should try and do goes back to some of the other things we've been saying through the course of this debate. We can fix digital inequality. The internet is not complete. It's highly stratified in a country like Australia. It's not inclusive. Years of work has gone into how and where we can build community capability for households as well. Work has gone into how we can improve the affordability of digital devices and services. Work has gone into how we can improve access to critical infrastructure, saving people's lives in emergencies and providing vital services for remote communities. So we know what needs to be done, we know where it needs to be done, and we know how it can be done. So it's not too late. If we know how to fix it, we should have a go. And this is something we can do together. I think the really dark side of the affirmative argument tonight has been the thought that, well, if this is so terrible, if we actually can't be bothered trying to improve what we've already got, what confidence could we possibly have about our collective ability to do any better with anything else? Thank you.
Well done. I've got to admit I gave you an extra minute there because we gave an extra minute to Zoe, and I feel like that was just only fair play. I hope you're all okay with that. Are you so... Ladies and gentlemen, 8 brilliant, passionate and occasionally alarming speakers. Let me try to summarise what's been argued, because in a few moments you're going to have to choose a side. The affirmative argued that it is too late. Rob opened with the structural case and enshittification not being a bug, it being the system. Always alarming to hear about those romance bots as well. I think that was hopefully nothing that we're dabbling in, but even just scary to know that's out there. Robin Fox brought the artist's perspective, communication, reality, addiction, being overwritten by commercial forces and AI threatening to homogenise their creativity that once made the internet worth inhabiting. Lisa Given gave us a date of death, 2016 indeed, and I think we could all resonate with that idea of search being a really degraded experience and our content being dead, our control being dead, the dead internet theory backing her up, and then switching to elections and trust, all a bit dire. And Zoe Coombs-Marr reminded us that we could stick a fork in it, basically. The OG cesspit of human community, I believe, was the expression. That was, well, comedy for some. Some of us take it very, very seriously. I didn't quite catch the grandmas not just being friends of a bear bit, but you'll have to explain that to me. I think it might have worked on a few levels there, Zoe. The negative have argued that it's not too late to save the internet. Kate Geck made the case that the internet is a design space and what can be designed can be redesigned, and wanted us to get friendly with friction, introduce more friction, throw away the lube. We want friction with our internet, creative friction. honourable, ethical friction, I guess. Akanksha Malik argued for practical optimism, that we're in the middle of a work in progress. It really made me feel like I was owning part of this journey that we're on. So what does that look like? Equitable access to technology, grassroots communities, more diverse voices in development that might genuinely change the trajectory that we're on, and that the people most capable of saving the internet are already doing the work. Lizzie O'Shea jumped in and made a case for democracies and citizen and policy engagement. Curiosity, creativity, building civic muscles. We're going to get swole with Lizzie. This is great. And Julian closed the negative by opening up the black box. The research that now exists to see that we can fix things, if we can fix things, we probably should. That we can regulate, we can decide. It's very empowering. It was very punk rock, very DIY. I liked that. And don't succumb to the dark side. And after May the 4th, I felt that was quite on message. Ladies and gentlemen, democracy, old-fashioned, loud. Tonight, the only metric that matters. I'm going to ask you to vote for the team that made the stronger case, not the team that confirmed what you already thought when you walked in. The team that genuinely challenged, changed, crystallised your view. The vote will be very scientific. It's going to be an audience, a clapometer. So we're going to get the teams to stand and or raise their hands or something, and we might do. Oh, thank you. Oh, amazing! The service is incredible. You don't get this on the internet. Not that I'm biased at all. All right, thank you. So, who should we do first? I don't know if it biases anything. If you believe the affirmative, the case that it is too late to save the internet, this group over yonder that made the bigger case, it's time for you to applaud for them now. Very good. All right. And now if you believe the negative made the stronger case that the internet, it's not too late to be saved, that it's worth fighting for, that it can be reclaimed, redesigned, yada, yada. I don't even need to defer to our resident sound expert to tell who's won there. Congratulations to the affirmative side. The negative side. This is so confusing.
It's the double negative.
This side. Does this just say that Melbourne's a bunch of optimists? It's very exciting.
What a pack of saps.
Addicts. There was an addiction response.
Yeah.
Clearly.
You weren't paying attention. You were like, oh no, sorry, I was on TikTok.
They've been unleashed and I don't have that bell anymore, so this is going to be good fun. All right, it's time for a panel conversation, and I'm very keen to see what questions you also might have submitted for this intelligent group to chew over. We've settled the fate of the internet democratically, as one does, but I suspect this conversation has a great deal further to travel. I'm just going to bring up ye old Slido. It's very meta.
No, I think that's a different company.
Oh no! All right. What have we got? Oh my gosh. All right. What would the better alternative version of the social media ban look like? Who would like to take a shot at that? I know there's a few strong opinions about the social media ban. Lizzie?
Sure, I'm happy to talk about it. So at Digital Rights Watch, we were very concerned about the social media ban. We joined many experts in child safety expressing concerns about it. We take a human rights approach that is, if you're going to impose on people's rights, you need to think about whether that is a legitimate purpose, whether it's proportionate to the aim and appropriately limited, and also what you're doing about the fact that you're imposing on people's rights. So restricting access to the internet has negatively affected a lot of young people. A lot of young people use the social media to build community, to find commonality, and this is a documented consequence that I don't think was properly considered at the time the ban was introduced and isn't being properly dealt with now. We also expressed a range of privacy concerns around age assurance technology and the like. What I think the alternative is making these spaces better, not prohibiting access to them, and giving children and also their carers, adults in their lives, trusted adults, whether that's parents or otherwise, the capability to take back power to make sure they can shape those spaces. I am very encouraged by the digital duty of care that's been proposed by a number of different representatives, is now being drafted and created by the government. What that actually looks like, I think, will be a really important discussion. What's included in digital duty of care, who we impose that upon, what the content is, how we can shape it. There's a really enormous opportunity here, particularly in light of the recent successful bellwether case in the United States, which held Facebook and Meta and Google responsible for addictive platform design. And so I think that's where the interesting stuff will come in. Not about restricting access because we find it too hard to make these spaces better, but talking about how laws can be imposed on those who have the power and the information and the knowledge to improve these spaces and make them places that are good to be, that bring out the best in us, rather than being anti-social spaces that are destructive and harmful.
Thanks, Lizzie. Rob, do you have anything to add to that?
Only that the one thing that I hear from young people is they would like an internet, they would like social media without the algorithm and without the feed. To manage, to control what is actually being seen and accessed, is the desire. But the other side of it as well is the wanting the right to be creative and to share, and that's one of the key things that's been lost in not allowing 16-year-olds in many of those settings, that we've forgotten, and that the policy forgets, that it's not just about exposure, but about engagement, sharing, creativity. So all of those positives of the long internet are the key things to ensure that we protect for young people.
Can I add to that as well? Because not from like a bit of a different perspective, because it's sort of what I was like, I'll talk about this later. So I think that I agree with both of you. I think there's a lot of, this is not from like a legal perspective, but there's a lot of concern about like children and harm and addiction and things like that. But the internet, from my perspective, and this is a lot of people, is that the internet and those platforms are an enormous part of my job. So for anyone working in the public, in entertainment, it's the one direct relationship that you have with your audience. So I've spent like 20 plus years building a relationship with an audience, and that is actually, that relationship is a real one. It's a connection, and it's how I make my money. Now the algorithm, because that has kind of been moved over into social media, and people are like, oh, okay, sure. What people have signed up to is this kind of relationship that is then is then owned by these other companies, and the agreement that was entered into 10 plus 15 years ago is no longer being it's no longer the same agreement, and it's actually your data that they are then and your relationships that they can then just change the algorithm. So what they did last year, like maybe it was 2 years ago, so in my industry, a huge thing that's happening right now is that, and most people don't realise this, the users are not aware. So if you follow me, and you've done so because you're like, I'd like to see what you're up to and I'd like to see your shows, you don't see me anymore. If I post something, it's now sent out to, it's not sent to my followers, it's sent to people who don't follow me. If the algorithm deems it to be a good clip, it will then send it to my followers. So you're being cut off from what you want to see, and I'm being cut off from actually a genuine kind of like connection and relationship that controls industries. And then you add to that things like, if with targeted marketing, when you want to put on an ad, it's actually very controlled what you can put on there. Now, I have noticed in like the last few months, queer, LGBT, gay, lesbian, none of those things are terms that you can target anymore. You can target mums, sport, yummy mummies, yoga. You cannot target queer. So that means that people who are trying to directly target a queer audience or a queer consumer cannot do so anymore. And those sorts of things, because they're hidden inside the algorithm, there's just no regulation of it. So that's my big boring rant, but that is actually a real thing that I think most people are not aware is going on at all, because there's no transparency.
Sorry, that's really interesting to hear, and it ties into an audience question that we've had about many of the problems pointed out by both sides seem to be traceable back to capitalism. Does the question then become, can we save ourselves from capitalism? Can we? A little outside of the scope of this discussion, but I still thought I'd bring it up because in terms of monetisation, who's the product, whose data is being sold, that sort of thing, I do think that is well within the scope of this conversation. Julian, did you have any thoughts to add on that, perhaps? Throwing you the tricky one.
Well, no, it's a great example of how the problem shifts and shifts into a domain which ostensibly we can't do anything about. I think, as I said during the debate, I think we can regulate for better products. We do this in lots of spaces, in lots of economic domains of life which are entirely capitalistic. We do regulate. So why don't we do it here?
Fair enough.
I think one of the great, I'm into oxymorons obviously, but one of the great oxymorons of capitalism is that, at the moment, the great sort of free hand of the market that we've all accepted as some kind of theological truth is actually just giving us the finger all the time. The free market is nonsense, and capitalism tends to monopoly. That's what it does. Competition means somebody wins, they buy, they win, they buy. Capitalism tends to monopoly. So this idea that we've accepted, we've sort of swallowed this pill that there's no other way for the world to work than capitalism, it's total bullshit. And I'm old enough to remember a time when we lived in an actual social democracy where certain things weren't the subject of capitalism, so we had prisons and schools and hospitals and roads that were part of a public domain. Then I have gradually watched over the course of my 52 years on the planet that get completely eroded so that now I pay to go on it. I remember when you'd go over the Westgate Bridge, you'd chuck your 50 cents in. Everyone who used the bridge paid for the bridge. When it was paid for, you stopped chucking your 50 cents in and everyone had it for free. We've privatised that space. Now, people own the roads. We've privatised prisons. It's an absolute absurdity to privatise something like a prison. We give violence to the state so we don't have to deal with it. That's the social contract in that sort of Hobbesian formulation. So capitalism is awful. And this is the problem of the internet. The internet is being run by these badly dressed people. Brilliant. I'm going to use that formulation all the time just to jab at them every time I can. But these toxic morons who we reward, look at what we reward. Look at salary structures. We have whole reward structures that reward the most awful behaviour. The most awful behaviour. And you can see it at shit floats to the top in capitalist systems. And we have lost any sense of a collective agency. So yes, capitalism is absolutely the problem, in my humble opinion.
Thanks, Robin.
I would say one of the narratives I'm seeking to break is that regulation and innovation are counterposed, because this is what is commonly put when you talk about this in policy terms. And, the Productivity Commission recently put out a report saying, we need to embrace the digital, the AI age, and we need to deregulate. We need to get rid of privacy law. We need to get rid of copyright law so that these models can train. There's no question of investment, right? So if you talk to other people who are working in this space, who are doing research, who are working on robotics, all sorts of AI for non-commercial purposes, maybe commercial at some point, but certainly much more of the opportunity to focus on human flourishing or human capability, they are being under-resourced because the focus on this field is to innovate as quickly as possible, buy up already existing products through procurement and otherwise, and no investment. And I think that's an opportunity, because I think most people think that the neoliberal model of outsourcing to the private sector is dead. I think there's a huge appetite for innovative reforms and huge public investment in that space to address large-scale problems like problems with technology and scaling up technology, but also things like climate change and the like, so you can orient that kind of technological innovation in the right direction. So I think the public are on board with this. It's a matter of getting the elected representatives to do the same. We can talk about limiting investment in US companies that have no interest in us. We can talk about investing in our public infrastructure, and I think that there's some real winnable kind of policy asks in that space.
Thanks, Lizzie. There's a question here saying, saving the internet or not doesn't acknowledge that around 20% of Australians are digitally excluded. And I had one which was about whose internet are we talking about? You know, when we say save the internet, whose internet do we mean? Is there a risk this whole conversation tonight is really about the experience of already privileged users while those on the margins face a fundamentally different and more urgent set of problems? Akanksha, I wonder if you want to speak about that at all.
That's such an easy one. Let me just solve the whole world's problem right now. I think it's really, really interesting, and this is the kind of part of the privilege conversation that we have a lot, especially at work, and I think it's really fascinating, all the things like DEI and cancels and things that are being removed across the world, and I think it's worth paying attention to that in the space where the companies that don't have to do it are very quickly letting go of it and the impact that's going to flow on through it. And the internet and the people who are already being excluded, that's not changing anytime soon. And like the biggest tech term you'll ever hear, actually I don't hear it as much now, but people still say it all the time, is go fast, break shit. Like, just keep doing that, just build. Build as fast as you can, keep breaking shit, it'll fix itself, it's fine. We'll figure out the things that are broken much later down the line. This is down the line. Everything's broken, as we've kind of talked about already. But the people that are getting left behind in this huge succession of AI agents and AI slop and everything else that's going through, and people are like, oh, why aren't you on this? Why aren't you on ChatGPT? Why? I work around the whole team of really, really technical people who work in AI every day. And to the outside world, when they talk to me like, oh, you work in AI, you're so onto it. I'm a boomer in my team. Like, I need you to understand this. I basically don't understand anything anymore. And that's someone who's already in the field and feeling left behind. So you can imagine the people who are already struggling with actually getting onto the internet, how far behind they're feeling. And there's so much work that can be done and is being done by people kind of just volunteering their time to get people across this kind of stuff and building them up into and not getting left behind. I don't have an answer to this. Go support your communities. Turn up to the events. Turn up to events like this. Like, I don't know if anyone else, actually it's a good question. Was anyone else itching to be on their phone while people were speaking today? Is everyone ashamed to say it? Because I was at one stage. Because I feel like I felt a buzz, and I was like, I'd be keen to know. And then someone said something, and I'm like, no, I'm back here. I need to pay attention to the words that are being said. Because it's really, really easy to forget to do that. So just go support events and be outside. Like, touch grass. It'll help, I promise. Yeah.
Thank you. And I think one of the things, like, because this is like most of my engagement with this stuff, is that connection of people going to events. It's also, I think people are very confused and lost as to how to, including me, like how to know when stuff is on or how to connect. Things like creating other alternatives that everything is not mediated through social media companies, essentially, because it's things like products going to actual stores where people actually are making things and selling them, going to following people directly, not through their social media, but actually if there's a musician or an artist or a comedian, they all have mailing lists, direct mailing lists, and those are the most valuable ways that you can have connection with those actual things that lead to real events. Looking at posters, writing things down, like actually engaging with those things, because social media just isn't feeding that information to people anymore. It's very biased and kind of inefficient. So I genuinely think that's a conversation I think we need to be having more of, like, what are the ways that we can engage in the world that do not involve massive like media, like social media companies, to go like, oh, actually, I can just walk into a shop, or like I can, do you know what I mean? Yeah.
I would agree. Digital rights. Oh, sorry. You.
No, it was just because like the friction piece. I think Kate, you said it's all of these AI things that are out there in the world. If anyone's looked into it more, like they'll talk about neural networks. All right, and the whole thing about AI is like, oh, it's really built like our human brains, and it follows the same kind of thing of how we learn, and it does the same thing, and it starts finding patterns. Our neural networks are built over time because we experience new things and we try different things, and it makes new pathways every single day. If you keep putting things into ChatGPT or like putting it into any kind of AI slob or any agent, those neural pathways stop forming. So doing the thing of like, instead of just being like, oh, I'll just add a reminder and do it, maybe write it down. Maybe build those networks back up again in your own neural networks to see where things are actually moving and going. And I say this all the time. I'll see people I'm like, either stop renting my brain and stop renting the internet's brain. Like, use your own brain sometimes. It makes a difference.
Yeah,
just like to say on that point that when I was sort of imagining what I would say in that 4 minutes, and there was so much I wanted to say that I didn't get to, is that basically one of the things that makes being alive bearable is human imagination and human creativity. And the bigger the internet gets and the more we outsource that, the less we become, like quite literally. Like it's what we are. And so we become less as it becomes more. And yeah, I just feel like I just wanted to add that to what you were saying, that idea that you need to think, even when I talk to people who say, let's get rid of the internet, but can we just keep maps? Like the irony of that, but the great irony of that is one of the greatest things you can do for neurogenesis, like the growing of brain cells, is actually geolocation. So, you know, the fact that we don't do that anymore is really bad.
You can also still have a digital map that's not on the internet.
You could, but you'd be better off just with a compass.
Offline maps, not sponsored or anything. Kate, we have ended up in a place of design chat here, and we have a thought experiment that's come in on the line, if you will. If you were to build the internet again from scratch, what would you prioritise? What would you keep from the model we have? I thought maybe you might be well placed to answer this.
It's a big question. Thank you. I think for me, the idea of patches comes to mind. And so, you know, as someone who's kind of grown up in lots of different music subcultures, I feel that, and also growing up in the 90s, you had to kind of seek out what you wanted. And you had to kind of find these patches and then kind of cultivate them and tend to them. And so you'd try and find shows to go to, you would meet people because they had shirts that you liked or whatever it was. And I think that the nature of a network really enables that idea of patches. So I think that if I were to redesign the internet, I would think of it as a series of patches where you had stronger and finer connections between those different patches. And I would encourage the people enjoying that network to understand how it works and to kind of try and grasp the tools and build something with it, you know, and that's sort of how subcultures work, and those beautiful moments of human connection are kind of facilitated often within those subcultures, and I think everybody here is cognizant of that and appreciative of that, and the internet is actually has the capacity to really enable those connections to happen and to allow them to flourish. But the problem is that we've outsourced the production of those networks to these tech bros. And everyone hates them. We know that. Right? But I mean, we can just yell at the void, or we can do something about it. And I think part of doing something about it is learning how these things work and building patches.
Mercifully, not this entire conversation has been about AI, but we knew we'd have to return to it at some point. Would the panellists say that the term information age is counterintuitive due to all the slop and disinformation that is so rife? Is AI making it better or worse?
Oh, here we go. The gut instinct is to say it's making it worse. But I don't know that it was all that great to begin with. I mean, I think that's part of the challenge. To me, what AI does is it actually heightens and illuminates all the existing problems so that we can't actually ignore them anymore. And even I'm seeing this in workplaces where people are all about, oh, we need productivity gains, we can use AI, it'll make the world a better place for us. And actually all that it does is highlight the fact that you've got broken processes, that you've got, old crap that you should have dealt with and gotten rid of a long time ago, that your workforce is actually not engaged in the way that they should be. And in that way, actually, AI can be fantastic if people are actually willing to step back from it, realize that technology is not the solution, but if you can actually use it as a tool that shows you how inefficient and broken you're already being, and how maybe, whether it's your customer base or students or whomever is on the other end of the system, then I think it can actually be really beneficial, but that is not how people are approaching it. They're approaching it right now as, this is the thing that's going to save us, we've got to put all of our eggs into that basket, and that's actually, sadly for them, why it's not going to work, and they're not going to get the productivity gains, but they're going to spend a lot of money, giving it to vendors who are selling them on that kind of a gravy train.
I think what I would say is that for the young people who are in my care, what's been really alarming for me, watching my stepdaughters reach their early 20s, for example, is just the massive trust deficit that they have with the internet now. And that is causing huge distress for them, because in the end, we're all just a series of stories that we tell ourselves about who we are and where we're going. They do not know what to believe in. They don't know who to trust. And I know that the world that I grew up in, I don't want to be that kind of, the world was awesome then. But there was something about the stupidity of the singular news source. We all got the same things. Or, you had your left wing and right wing paper. You'd buy both, you'd read both, you'd argue about it. I just think that the trust deficit is really, really dangerous, because it leads to a malaise, which will actually erode the capacity to do all the wonderful things that you were talking about on the positive side of the ledger. If we are going to organise, if we are going to rely on democratic action and getting together and doing these things, we have to believe in something, and I really worry that there's very little for people to hang on to, and I think AI plays a hugely destructive role in creating that environment.
I would just say Australians rate in global terms some of the least optimistic people about AI. They rate almost at the bottom in polling on this. We're together with Finland and New Zealand. I love that little cohort. And in some ways, I feel that's like the bullshit detector at work. And I see your point about the problems created by mistrust, but I also see in some ways that skepticism is an asset, because there are a bunch of salesmen now trying to pitch their product to everybody. Like, there's an argument that we should talk about AI companies as military contractors, not AI companies, because they are planning to sell to government, military being a huge source of profit for them, consumer perhaps less, consumer-facing products less. But selling into all levels of government, not just military, I think is a big part of their business model now. And we need to treat that with skepticism, not accept that this is how they'll get their returns for the VCs that have invested tens and tens of billions of dollars in these companies, and not allow that tail to wag at the dog, right? And so I think that mistrust can be a foundation for better policy making, provided it's directed and shaped and engaged with, not ignored, not like, there's no way to convince people by saying, you're just wrong to mistrust this technology. That always works when you're trying to convince people of something, right? So there's a real need, I think, to acknowledge that, to figure out ways that you can ask organisations, institutions with this technology to earn people's trust. And the other component of that global polling is individuals are more likely to trust these systems if they have guarantees that there's compliance with international standards and laws, right? These are not inconsistent. Trust will lead to adoption in ways that are positive, I think, and beneficial. All this spruiking of this industry and downplaying of the mistrust leads in the opposite direction, because people are less inclined to use it and will be less inclined to use it well. So that's our future. We have to embrace that and find ways to fix that problem, not try and downplay it or ignore it.
Julian? No? Zoe? No?
Well, I would just say from like an individual point of view, it's that thing. I think the skepticism is good, and then it's about acting on that as well. I think we've become so just sort of immune to just, they're all evil, but we have to use them anyway. It's like, actually, sometimes you actually don't. Like, it's like boycotts do work, and like working out like what, like changing the search engine on your phone, or like actually not, like don't use ChatGPT. As soon as someone pulls out ChatGPT, I'm like, no offense, because I'm sure people here do use it. I'm like, you're a fucking idiot. Like, and I'll say, I'm like, my estimation of them, like, there is a social consequence to using ChatGPT. If only I think you're a fucking idiot. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we need to sort of start, there is currency in our opinions on things. And actually, like, we can use that in a social way, we can use it in a community way, and we can use it as consumers. Like, there are actual things we can do. And there's power in it. I think it's like, and then, I'll see you on the bush block.
Rob?
I think for me, one of the things I always like to be careful about with AI is thinking about the quite diverse array of uses and utilities. I mean, I find it fulfills a need for me when I'm searching for, a phrase in a lot of documents. It's faster than any file search program, coding that I have. So, there are benefits for that. But there's a lot of research that's, we're back on my latest obsession, which is the chatbot. A lot of, chatting is one of the highest uses of AI at the moment. And a lot of research that's praising its utility for, say, older people who are lonely and having someone to talk to. And that this is such a great thing. I think this is about the most horrifying thing I can think of. And this is where it's not AI that is the problem, but the need that it is fulfilling. So to ask that question, well, why are people feeling lonely? Why are people not able to connect? Why are is there no chatting among people who live next door to each other? And what do we actually do about that? So the addressing it is keep the utility, but think for various purposes. In various ways, but think about what we actually need to change socially, and again, we come back to those questions of capitalism, transactional relationships, hyper-individualism, and so on. That's the key.
And can I just, sorry, we were talking about, this is going to sound like such a tangent, we were talking about gambling behind the backstage before we came out, and I'm not sure if people know, but a lot of these technologies are actually built with the same kind of psychology behind it. Like all of the things around, if you're building an app on Claude, for example, because I had this happen to me 2 weeks ago, I started building and it was like almost right. I was like, I'll just fix this one thing and it'll be almost right. And it's just that almost right, and it was 4 hours later and it was 1 a.m. and I was still awake trying to fix that almost right. Because there's a little hit of dopamine of like, I built a thing, but it's not there yet. Let me do it again. Let me go again. Let me go again. And it's really built in for that exact same experience at the pokies of like, next hit, I'll get it next time. It'll be right next time. Because it's really designed to do that. And again, it goes back to, it's not intelligent. Please remember that. Don't get fatigued by all the things that are out there, but it's not intelligent. It's just predicting literally the next word. It doesn't even know the full sentence. It just predicts the exact next word that should be out there. And if it's a really long word, it's predicting the next half word. Just putting that out there. So that's how smart it is. Don't base everything into that. And just really, it's more as aware as you can be about the way these things are built for your attention economy. It's really scary when you start thinking about that and what you're actually spending hours and hours of your day doing.
Yeah, because we are sold the idea that it saves time, right? And then we're going to get some other time to do other things with. But that time is then just, we're spending way more time and things take heaps more work, and we are actually just working for free for these companies all the time. It's extraordinary to me, just how wrong it is all the time. Have you ever clicked on one of the suggested searches on an Instagram reel? I click on, because they come up on my videos, I click on them sometimes. They are just made up, the wrong name. Zoe Coombs-Marr is a British TV personality who makes content about her children. I'm Australian, childless, and and it's just all of, I don't even know how it gets them so wrong. What is it? What is it?
You're a woman. You should have a child.
Well, I should. I know. That's where
it's coming from. Right? It's the expectation is obviously that's the right answer.
More than expectation, it's probable.
Yeah, it's just wild though that it's even. Yeah, I mean those are the things where I'm just like, what is it?
What's also wild is I'm thinking that Zoe has a second career in the wings waiting as a digital consultant right here. So this has been very interesting and educational this evening. Look, I hope that this further discussion has satisfied a little bit of some of our appetite for this debate. It was really great reading all your questions. I'm sorry we didn't get time to ask all of them. I was trying to have some sort of narrative in our conversation here. But before we wrap, one final question for the audience, and this time it's personal, not who won the debate, but what do you actually think? Are you genuinely thinking that the internet's too late for saving? Let's just hear a little bit of applause for it's too late. Oh, it's where your votes were before. So make some noise if you believe we have a chance, it's worth saving. They're all just a pack of internet addicts, I think. What do you reckon?
Well, we don't really have a choice, do we?
That's right. It's all a bit spurious.
Us or it.
Yes. All right, noted for the record. Thank you very much for weighing in. I suspect the internet itself would not have predicted that outcome either. Ladies and gentlemen, that does bring us to the end of tonight's Provocations event. A big thank you to RMIT University and the Provocations team for creating a series genuinely committed to asking the hard questions. and trusting audiences to rise to meet them. Particular thanks to Helen Withercombe and Elizabeth McCarthy, and to everyone across RMIT who's worked so hard behind the scenes. Production, stage management, communications, everything in between. The mics have been seamless. I mean, that's impressive alone. Events like this do not happen without a lot of invisible effort, and it's enormously appreciated. Thank you to the Capitol. What an extraordinary venue for a debate about the future. There's something entirely right about having this conversation in a building that survived a century of technological upheaval and is still gloriously and beautifully standing. And most importantly, thank you to our 8 speakers tonight. We've got Rob Cover, Kate Geck, Robin Fox, Akansha Malik, Lisa Given, Lizzie O'Shea, Zoe Coombs-Marr, and Julian Thomas. Thank you very much. You've all been a wonderful audience, an engaged audience. We couldn't ask for more. You're free to escape to the foyer or run for the hills entirely tonight if this has left you wanting to delete some apps. For everyone else, the bar's open in the foyer. Have a drink. A bunch of us are going to stick around and maybe we can have some real life arguments, which is, you know, what the internet was all about after all. The internet may or may not be saved, but tonight in the room I think we've made a decent start. Thanks all for coming. Good night.
And round of applause for our host as well, Vanessa.